Diontae Johnson, who finished wide receiver 39 last year, 86 receptions, 147 targets, 882 yards, 0 touchdowns, an average of 8.6 targets per game. Thoughts on Diontae Johnson?
Had the potential to be a really decent season if he was able to fall into the end zone a couple times, but the lack of touchdowns definitely made that a struggle. Now, he's a PPR monster, right? 147 targets is a big, big number. I do think we see that regress a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if that was 125 to 130 this year as we get into kind of our next guy and his maturation and the cohesiveness that he seemed to have. But you'd like to have some touchdowns, but they're very unpredictable. So if the floor is 0, and we saw where that was for Diontae Johnson, he's not being drafted extremely high in redraft leagues. So there is some built-in value there. If you're looking for a third wide receiver, Diontae Johnson could fit that bill. I would suspect he falls into the end zone 4 or 5 times this year and bounces back a little bit. The question is he the true number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh this season? I would argue that he is not going to be.
I would join you in that argument. I would be a concurring opinion, to steal a phrase from the highest court, because, man, how almost baffling to have 0 touchdowns out of this guy with the amount of footballs he saw thrown his way, the amount of catches that he had. To have none of those land in the end zone is absolutely wild. And I do think that target share will come down, not only because of the next guy that we talk about, but because of the crafty veteran that they brought in as well to be a third option there in Pittsburgh, that I think is going to command some targets and some attention from defenses as well anytime he's out there on the field, because you just don't want to get beat by him. So I think that Diontae Johnson, probably not the number 1 option, but I do think that, where he was last year without the touchdowns is great. And he's kind of going in that, wide receiver 3 territory. I easily see him bottom end of wide receiver 3 territory. I could easily see him finishing in the upper end of wide receiver 3 territory. So the return on investment is a win.
Where he's coming off the board, right? ADP of 74 puts you kind of 8th round right there. Or 7th round, I'm sorry. Put you in the 7th round on that one. There's some value to be had there, especially when you're talking wide receiver like 36, 37. So I think we'll see him definitely return value on this. But not surprising that he didn't see the end zone. This was a Pittsburgh offense that only scored 12 passing touchdowns all year. They were dead last in the league when it came to touchdowns through the air. So it just wasn't there. Some of that has to do with the rookie quarterback, having to do with some of the changes that they go along with that. I had Diontae Johnson last season on the in the home league, was incredibly frustrated by that. And it was one of those that, even though he was a heavily targeted guy, it was hard to use him on your roster and hard to use him in your starting lineup to be able to put together a roster to compete. So I think that the fantasy draft capital that you're spending on him reflects that. But I think that he'll absolutely outperform where he's coming off the board at.